Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the MLIR Open Design Meeting. Today we share Open Design Meeting with an area team public meeting. So we, as the area team consisting of Matthias, Jacques, Renato, and myself, will meet in public and discuss a lot of agenda items. Actually, have a proper agenda document for that. I'm sort of excited to see more people in this meeting than before. I'm sorry for you folks if it's going to be boring, because the first half of it, at least, is the four of us are going to discuss stuff, and I will kindly ask people not to interject into the discussion unless we explicitly ask for input. The second half will be sort of office hours, so after we are done with our agenda, we are open to questions, we are open to more discussions and so on, but I'd like for the area team to be able to get through the agenda first before we open up to the public. So let me share, if I can, the agenda. Okay. I am screen sharing. Thank you, Zoom. I know that I'm screen sharing. Can you guys see this? I mean, you don't necessarily have to see it. I will elaborate. So I did the reminder of the engagement rules. So it's an area team meeting. Area team is the first in line to talk. One thing that we promised we would do, and we are about to deliver on that, is the MLIR maintainers list. So for context, MLIR famously did not have maintainers until now. Roughly 2 months ago, we posted a call for potential maintainers. We collected information from people who wanted to maintain parts of MLIR and volunteered. We looked into that and came up with initial list. It's all described in this thing that I will post on the forum. But basically, the idea is we are going to subdivide maintainers into multiple categories. The four of us from the area team will take overall leader maintainer role shared between all of us for all of MLIR, meaning if something is not clear or not covered by something else, or there is a disagreement between maintainers, or maintainers want to step down or step up, please reach out to us. This is specifically the four of us. This is not the current area team, so should the area team change, we will discuss with the new area team how that should proceed. Basically, maintainers are opposite, like there are orthogonal from the area team. We just happen to be people who volunteer to maintain everything. MLIR is further split into 3 categories. Just to make it clear, these are only so we can more easily find who is the maintainer, so the person who knows how to answer questions. This is not about splitting the project, moving code around, anything like that. It's purely documentation. So we have a category we call core. So core consists of CMake, conversion infrastructure, bindings, other like libIR, libanalysis, libtransforms, and a bunch of dialects. So built-in obviously goes there. Anything that consists of code structure, so structured control flow, pointers, and so on goes to core. Basic compute like arrays and mass goes to core, and some accessory stuff that basically goes to core because we didn't know where else to put it, it goes there. We have an egress category. I slightly renamed it from low-level category because I didn't like the connotation of low-level maintainers. Sounds like the maintainers are low-level, so now it's an egress category and egress maintainers. Everything that goes out of MLIR, so to LLVM, to SPIR-V, to C, and to vendor dialects goes here. It has its own list of maintainers. And similarly, the tensor category, so anything that is more specific to tensor compilers, namely linear algebra dialects and tensor member vector type trit, goes into this. So each of the category has its own maintainers, and it's the same as if you had a global maintainer for the overall LLVM project, it's the same relation. So these people in categories can decide on top of individual components. And then if there is a disagreement, or if there is a disagreement between what belongs to which category, or disagreement within the category that gets escalated to lead maintainers. And similarly, from individual maintainers, sometimes there are several people here, it gets escalated first to the category maintainers, and if that cannot be resolved, it gets escalated further. So I have a complete list. I'm not going to go through it. This list has been shared with the area team before, so we all worked on this. It took surprisingly a lot of time. So I think for the public meeting, my point is, I think we all looked at this, participated in it. No one in particular is to blame. I would ask for a vote of like, show your hand if you agree with that in the area team. Okay, let's consider that approved unanimously. I will make a post and the following steps. I will first submit I'll send a PR for the project council to approve, nominating MLIR lead maintainers, and then lead maintainers will nominate everybody else, so we don't have to throw this multi-page document to people. Okay, that's good. Moving on to the next item is we actually got a bunch of RFCs creating new dialects. So it is sort of the first, well, it's not really the first time, second time we're doing, but in the full committee before we did with Matthias, is to look at this. And what I would like to first show is we have this policy saying in LLVM in general, there is an RFC process, how you propose major changes. MLIR sort of adopted that, being a part of LLVM. And in this, the important part I want to highlight is this notion of rough consensus. There is a long document from IETF, which is a thing that basically establishes internet standards. That's a pretty serious body. And they operate by what they call rough consensus. My very short summarization of this. Rough consensus does not mean everybody should say we agree. It means the community overall agrees with the direction. There might be some disagreement, and the disagreement was addressed appropriately. And appropriately in this case, specifically in this rough consensus by ETF process, means that there is an authority that says, we think there was enough of due process addressing the concerns. The concerns were addressed. The person raising the concerns might not think it was satisfactory, but we can sort of overrule that and say, well, we certify there is overall consensus in the community. That's at least my reading of this.
Yes, but historically in the IETF, people that disagree vehemently with the RFC, even though it was community approved and body signed off, would then create a separate RFC that would get reviews. And if nobody cared about that new RFC, then it was clear that consensus was actually formed, right? But if there's chaos, then they try to do this to say, look, the body has reached a conclusion, not necessarily a full consensus, but a rough consensus. And the conclusion is we accept because it has to stop some time. And then if you have some different idea, go do this. And that's why we have a lot of different, well, initially we had a lot of different HTTP and web protocols because people had different ideas. And then suddenly we converge into the ones we have today. And that's it, right? So Google has a few, HTTP2 and the UDP-based ones and etc. And they said, look, here's an RFC. We implement it. If you want to use it. There was no reaching consensus or rough consensus. People just started using because it was good. And now it's a de facto standard rather than a body-approved standard. So I think that it's very flexible how the IETF uses the RFC process. And it's more or less in line with how we use it too. So I think it's we don't need to encode it like super rigidly.
Yeah, I think my main point here is that I would like us as a community to shift a bit from what seems to be the implicit current agreement that we need a unanimous consensus to this notion of rough consensus. And if
I don't think there was ever a community acceptance that it has to be unanimous. I think some people in the community wants it for them to agree, and that's different, right? So, I
That-
get what you mean. I agree with you.
Yeah, that's why I'm pushing, like, this is the policy that we have, and I'm trying to use it to say, okay, we are in a position where we can look at an RFC and say, well, we think there was enough diligence, we think it should go in or it shouldn't go in, and if there is strong disagreement by somebody in the community, I guess the solution then, please post a new RFC saying,
Later.
well, undo that.
Yeah.
And we will discuss that, and if there is opposition to undoing, we will not. So I think that's,
agree.
We're also trying to establish the process for ourselves here. So okay, that's as a reminder. So I selected 4, and I have a topic later on to figure out how do I select them. So the selection is as follows. First is WebAssembly. So I'm going to operate on the assumption that everybody on the area team at least looked through the RFC. There was an ODM for this, so it's basically adds a WebAssembly dialect that operates with SSA values without a WebAssembly stack. There was a discussion. Actually, they found a different group who works on something similar, and they seem to be willing to collaborate. And I don't actually see any opposition to that. Does somebody else feel differently?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think this is a nice example of one where, it was clear there's interest from many different parties, clear maintainers, and it fits and feeds a useful user base. So, for me, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so I would say, Matthias, you want to say something?
Yeah, I haven't followed the discussion towards the end, but you said they want to collaborate. So is it that there are basically 2 dialects that are developed in parallel, kind of, right? One is.
Yeah, somebody in like a research organization worked on this privately, and they made an archive preprint. They have not open sourced their dialect yet. But they're saying, yeah, it's great to see the project. I'm happy to collaborate. And they're interested in a slightly orthogonal, so they're interested in WebAssembly optimization by itself, not like going to LLVM from WebAssembly.
Yeah, that's a good signal that there's not just one group, there's multiple who are interested in this.
Yeah. So, and in general, like given the lack of opposition, I say we can basically certify we see consensus on this.
Just to be sure, because if I understand correctly, the last guy has already something downstream. So the consensus is that these guys are working on this, and we'll be happy to have whatever births from this discussion, right? Not necessarily let's add one of them and then try to add the other later or something, right? We just like saying this is a good idea to have, and whenever they find some common ground.
What we are saying is we want to have a WebAssembly dialect.
Yes, we do.
We will nominate one of those people as a maintainer, and it will be up to them to decide what is specifically the WebAssembly flavor we want.
Agree. Yeah.
That's a good point about WebAssembly. When it comes to a dialect around anything that potentially has infrastructure, civilization, or any other requirements that are parallel to MLIR dialect maintenance, there often arises the question as to how to maintain their native civilization or other infrastructure alongside MLIR civilization, and how to interrupt between the 2 of them. I didn't see any reference to that in the RFC, but I assume the owner has that figured out.
Yes, I think the best way to discuss that is to ask on the RFC. Here we are trying to make progress on whether we, as the area team, think it should move forward or not.
Yeah, I might mention this was brought up in the ODM as well, but yes, probably better to discuss it further on the RFC.
Okay. The XEVM dialect. So the RFC was.
Alex, just one question. You're clicking on the links. Are you intending to show that screen as well?
Yeah, we're not seeing what you click into.
It's not showing. Okay, sorry. Let me reshare. Yes, Zoom is interesting. Share screens. Here. I am screen sharing.
Yep, I can see now.
Thank you. So next CVM dialect, a dialect similar to NVVM as the name implies, or ROGDL. So it's basically a low-level counterpart to XE GPUs that we already have. Lower to LLVM. It's been up for 2 weeks. It sounds like a decent time. I think most of the discussion was around how it was presented and how it was presented as different from a previous proposal about an Intel GPU. It was clarified. There was a question on how it maps one-to-one to LLVM intrinsic or not, but basically that's it. So I don't necessarily see any opposition to that. I don't see support either, but I would say...
Jakub, he says in one of his replies that he supports 100% this. I think it's this reply that you have on your screen right now. So I had a conversation because there was a misunderstanding on the language. So I had a conversation with him and I explained what the language meant and what this meant, and he said, "Oh yeah, okay, that's obviously good, right?" So the whole discussion between me and him was mostly about our perception of the SPIR-V dialect, had nothing to do with XEVM.
Yeah, fair enough. So let me double check. So there is some support. Well,
yeah, so if you look at...
I would count likes as sort of support of people saying no comment.
Yeah. But if you look at... keep going down. Let me see if I can find the actual text.
Just search for 100%.
Yeah, search for 100%. I think you're going to find it. Number 5.
Yeah, it's here. Thing is, the Zoom thingy closes the numbers from me. Yeah, it's number 5, so it's 500% agree. So I think then even that discussion was resolved. There is no more written support, which I would say is not surprising because it's a vendor-specific dialect.
And the answer was answered. So because Thomas was worried, is this the same thing or do we have different things? And the answer is no, this is exactly the same thing. XEVM is identical to NVVM and ROCDL in that sense.
Yeah, so based on that, I am inclined to claim this is a consensus of few people who care.
Yeah, I mean, I think the parallels between what NVIDIA has done here and AMD has done here, and what Intel is proposing to do, as long as with positioning, etc., I think makes it not controversial, really. I think the initial positioning was a little bit confusing, but post clarification, I think given the parallels, I don't think there's actually any controversy here.
Okay, so let's say consensus to accept. That good?
Yep.
Okay. Moving on. We have this dialect, also 2 weeks on. It proposes a dialect for distributed heterogeneous computing, which basically consists of a notion of a task, of a target, and that's pretty much it. There is support for the idea with a couple of questions. There is more support for the idea and how it would connect and compose with the mesh dialect. Yeah. There is a bit of a concern here on non-overlapping. And there is also this comment is mostly positive, and then I asked some questions which are basically along the guidelines we have for new dialects. Yeah. And there was no response so far. And it was not clear.
The one confusing part of this, and this is why I tagged Frank, is because we already have the mesh dialect, which is sort of heterogeneous things, right? It's not directly heterogeneous, it's sort of heterogeneous. And some of the solutions that they are putting on the proposal are similar to the solutions that we had done in the mesh dialect. So I think it would be interesting for them too, Frank, and the original proposal, who is Robert Samuel, to at least dissect what is mesh, what is this heterogeneous, and if we need two or if we need one, right? So I would like to see this at least, because after the initial discussions, the original author just stopped replying, right? And there are still some open questions. So I would like to because I don't want to create two dialects that do the same thing, especially because Frank is trying to move the mesh dialects to an actual usable target dialect, and that means heterogeneous stuff. So I think them two can work together in the same area, and perhaps even rename the mesh dialect to something different and implement the same thing. So instead of creating a new dialect and then trying to fuse the two, just move the existing mesh dialect into something more broad, supporting also heterogeneous targets, and then which means the work that the Samuel has done goes into MLIR, but not necessarily as a new different dialect.
Okay, that's an interesting proposal. Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
No, I mean, I would just say, I think the questions at the bottom for me are actually quite important ones with respect to, like actual usage and maintenance. Just because like I've seen a couple of different variants of this, 6 of those floating around already out there, so like knowing what kind of optimizations they've already done on it, what kind of scheduling algorithms, where they've tested it out on, all of these kinds of things, I think would be quite valuable. So yeah, I don't know that, like, we have the mesh one. I think it's taken a little bit of time before there was, I don't know if there was any like real active use. So like, I wouldn't want to, like add something else where there's again a delay before there's, more active engagement.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say, like, on a procedural question, I'm happy to, like, either I can communicate this or each of you can go and post. I think these are valuable comments. I am not sure the author actually wants to merge that into the MEF dialect. Like, it's not what they're proposing.
Right.
Yeah. So to be clear, I don't necessarily. I think my response is in a way more saying, like, I think it's too early for us to make any decision here because the discussion is still ongoing.
Yeah, and it's a completely new thing, and there's no code, no examples, no ideas. It's just one post saying I want to add this, right? And there's a lot of questions that were unanswered there. Okay, so I don't think we have the enough information to make a hard decision now.
Yes, I think what I would like to say, do we say please continue the discussion and we will revisit, or do we say sorry, we don't think it's a good fit?
Oh no, I think it's discussion, more discussion needed.
Yeah. I mean, it's yes, they haven't responded within a week, but I mean, it's not like we put a deadline on them to respond.
And 4th of July, I don't know if the person is in the US, right?
Yeah.
So yes, yeah.
Okay. That's good. Matthias, do you want to comment on that too?
Yeah, no, I agree. Also, especially the questions that you posted on the last reply, there were a few good ones, like what is the community behind that, and it would be nice to see what the answer to that is.
Yeah. Okay. And the reading. So let's say there's an answer to this, and then Frank says, "Well, this is exactly the community we're already serving with Mesh." Right. So I think this is why it's important to know the answer to those. Is that if we already serving this in another way, then let's just work together. Like the WASM, right? oh, there's two now. Well, let's fuse that into one and work together.
Mm.
Okay. Thanks. Final one. This was a contentious one, which is why I'm bringing it here. I think we actually managed to address most of the contention in the thread, in particular because it was opened by Renato, who is on the area team and who knows the rules we have. But basically, I'm bringing this to say, okay, there was a contention moving versus renaming, maintained, unmaintained, CPU versus GPU, and so on. I would like to see what, maybe Renato, you can summarize your take on this. And I would like to say, is there any next step we can recommend?
Right. So the contention was that the VCIX dialects, like the XEVM, NVVM, and all of the harder, low-level dialects, low-level harder dialects, are in the LLVMIR dialect, right? They're part of the sub-dialects of the LLVMIR dialect. And the problem with this is if in GPUs, before we only had two GPU dialects, NVIDIA and AMD. Now we have three. So all three dialects are now going to be in the LLVMIR. In the CPU world, we didn't do it like this. And we have multiple dialects for different extensions. ARM has Neon, SVE, and SME. Intel has AVX, AMX, AVX 512. And RISC-V has about almost 100 different extensions, right? And if we add all of those into LLVMIR, then we're going to be 100 dialects that is going to just be polluting the dialect namespace. So my proposal was, in the CPU dialect, in the x86 CPU dialect, we have combined all of this into one, and we don't pollute the namespace, and this is just like x86 dot AMX, AVX, etc. This is the proposal. We haven't got there yet, but we made it work, and the intrinsics, which was the big contentious part, it's also done. Adam did a good job at just condensing all this into the TableGen file, and it's all good. And we spoke to Andre from ARM, and he agrees, if this cleans up and it's much easier. The patches that we send are like much easier now because we don't have all of these multi-layer dialects. So the ask in this thread was, we should have a different, because the realities are different for GPU and CPU, we should have we don't want to follow the same standard just because these are harder dialects, right? This is an arbitrary division anyway. So the idea is CPU dialects can have a high-level dialect with the intrinsics inside the TableGen file in the higher-level dialects. They don't need to be in LLVMIR. And the second proposal is, which is I'm not part of this, it's just like a tangent to this, is to now group all of the ARM dialects, ARM CPU dialects into one and have namespaces, which is also something that I address and you address in your reply. So there's too many things going on in there, right? And at least from my reading, Andre agrees that we don't need to have this in LLVM and that we could just merge everything. The RISC-V maintainer said, I don't care, we can have this in a high level. Actually, when they start adding more dialects, he actually thought, okay, it would be a good idea to have all of these under RISC-V rather than multiple dialects with crazy naming schemes. And that was it. So the contention was more like how to move, where to put, past decisions. It wasn't really... and some binding into, we need to do like the GPU dialects. We don't, right? I don't think that's so. There was, at least in the CPU guys, there was consensus that we don't need to do like the GPU just because it's a harder dialect. We can have CPU dialects that are different than GPU dialects.
Okay, and who is the current maintainer of that?
There's multiple, right? For the current, we don't really have maintainers.
Yeah, I mean the VCIX dialect. Do we have somebody for that?
Not yet, but he will be the MC guy.
MC Shockwave is their handle.
Shockwave, that's it.
Yeah. Are they on board with your proposal?
Yes.
Okay. So, and then there was lateral discussion on like features and sub-targets and so on.
Yeah. Like all of the chaos was in the tangents, not in the actual core thing.
Yeah, so I would like to recenter this. So out of abundance of precaution, Renato, since you're the one proposing, I will
abstain. Yes.
Yeah, I will mute you, and I will ask I'll ask Jacques and Matthias to comment if they have something to say. Like, do they think there is consensus? Do they think like what's the recommended way of action, in your opinion?
So perhaps just to double check. So I believe where we've ended up with this discussion at the moment is to say the dialect remains, to go back to the original question phrasing, but it should be moved similar to what other CPU dialects are, and namespace appropriate. Well, namespace, I should say appropriate. That's not correct. Namespace within like RISC-V as a prefix. Is that sort of the proposal that we're discussing now?
I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense because that gets more uniformity like CPU side. I also agree with Andre in the thread with respect to like the versions with GPU. I think it would be good to get some experience along the way with these two different approaches, and then potentially come back to like the sub-targets or features aspect. But I think for the very next steps, this sounds quite reasonable, especially given I don't think there seems to be any opposition from the maintainers involved here.
So what I would like to know, who do we have somebody who volunteers to do this work? Are the maintainers going to do that, or because I think it's a bunch of work to probably moving the files around. It's probably mostly boilerplate, but it is work that has to be done.
So can I speak,
Sure.
Alex?
Yeah.
It is not a bunch of work. It's more mechanical work, like moving files, right, and creating a new dialect surrounding. My proposal to Shockwave was not to do this now, right? I don't think this is an urgent thing. It was just a question. So when RISC-V adds a second dialect, then I would ask them to put under at RISC-V. But until then, it doesn't really matter. It's not a huge deal. It's one mini dialect with 2 odds. It's not a big deal. It was mostly about how do we structure this once RISC-V start exploding their sub-dialects.
When they add a second one, that means the current one stays?
Yeah.
So we're talking about a future design for the next dialect, but not about this one here.
No, okay. So this is why it was completely off the rails. We didn't need to go through all of this thing. It was just a quick question: how do we do for the next one? And
do we know consensus? Do we know there is a next one?
No.
Because if there is no next one, it will just remain where it is indefinitely.
It is so. If you look at my original post, it had like 5-6 lines because it is this unimportant, right? And then suddenly it became this huge thing. So it wasn't meant to be anything super important, right? But I think it actually, I was discussing with Andre already about this whole restructure of the CPU dialects, right? This is a tangent thing. There's nothing to do with this, which is regrouping the all of the extensions under the same architecture, right? So this is something that Adam did for the x86 dialect, and we are going to propose to merge the AMX into x86 again, and then we're going to have 3 sub-dialects. So this is something that we're trying to do this for x86 just because it's more sane than what we have today. And I discussed this with Andre, and he agrees. He just says, I don't have time to do this now, but whenever I have time, I will do this because I think it's a good idea.
So one thing, like it's an action item for ourselves, probably, is we want, like it sounds like we have a consensus on a design. I think that has to be documented somewhere.
Yes.
We do not have a place for that.
Yeah. I can write that document. This can be an IR for me. to write and submit a PR into some MLIR document.
Yeah. Let's say we have a rationale, like a docs rationale subdirectory that was last updated like 4 years ago. I would say this is where it can go.
Yep. It's about time we start writing those. Sorry.
I mean, we could add it to just the dialect as well, or at a top level description document tag. Because like if you look, for example, like some of the website we generate, you can group different parts of the dialect files together under a subheading. So even without moving code, we can create a subheading for this. You know, if we just
then we do this for every CPU dialect.
No. What I meant is for this, given we already have this like one, we can just, if this is a decision based on it, or if you're saying this is for all CPU.
It would be for all CPU dialects.
Yeah, it sounds like it's for all CPU dialects, and it needs like a justification why it's different for CPU dialects than for GPU.
And if a new CPU comes, a new CPU architecture comes, you should follow the same mechanism.
Yes. So, I mean, I don't think we have a rationale for why it's different from GPU. Do we?
According to Alex, this was kind of by accident in his reply.
No. What I mean is going forward. I don't care about historical. Yeah. So, I mean, I think just documenting this could even be a PR or sort of a GitHub issue. You know, I think it's already fine. Just some place where we can point to that has some provenance. I think it's fine.
I just checked internally. Angie is out of office, but everything that's been mentioned so far sounds okay, and I would really support the document, so that can be a source of collaboration and consensus.
Yeah, I would say, like, by writing, we can get clarity on whether we have a clear rationale for why CPU only or not. Because for now, I think the rationale is people working on CPU dialects agreed with that. That's why everything that touches to CPU should follow or be discussed with the people. And everything else might want to like opt in or not, or we will force it to opt in later on.
Yeah.
It's a weak, like it's not a technical decision, but ultimately it's not a technical problem either.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually say that CPU has a stronger rationale to be nested underneath LLVM than GPUs do. But again, this is a different discussion that we're having here. So we'll table it for when we have it.
Because if you look at what GPU does, they lower through LLVM, and CPUs lower to LLVM, right? Because the LLVM backend is the final stage, while in GPUs, it's not the final stage. So they're very different use cases. The intrinsics in GPUs are much more to the compiler that is going to interpret this later. And the intrinsics to CPUs are normally, that's an instruction, don't touch it. I know what I'm doing, right? So there's very different use cases.
Anyway, it looks like something that is better if it's documented somewhere and then we can see about it.
Yeah.
I'll also do a time check. We have 15 minutes left. I have 2 more points. One is directly related. It's directly related because Renata mentioned, it was a like 6-line post and it devolved into a long contentious discussion. And basically it relates to like, how do we choose what do we have to discuss in this? Like clearly adding a dialect would be one, but generally there is this RFC process, and RFC process in LLVM says about a major change. Like what is a major change? When do we require an RFC? Is something like what his name, Jeremy Kuhn posted about a tool that he wrote. Is that an RFC in a sense? Like to me, it does not require any process or approval or anything or discussion. Like what do we think like about when do we engage? Do we have like, could we go and say, well, if you write RFC in the title, it means it will go through the process and we will discuss it? Or like something?
This is a language problem, right? I don't think we can create a rule that will apply correctly every time, right? I think just you look at the RFCs and say, I will talk about this one, not about that one. And if somebody says, oh, I want you to talk about this one, then they ping us on the thread.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an RFC, which is technical discussion, happens on discourse, mostly offline. We come to a consensus, move on. I don't think Area Team needs to get involved at all, right? Like if there's something contentious or it requires, like, I don't know, like different project infrastructure or blah, blah, blah. Okay, maybe a different story, right? And I'll be honest, I use RFC very loosely in the, like, literally request for comment.
Yeah.
I want feedback. Give me advice.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How about this? Instead of worrying about the RFC tag, we just worry about the Area Team Act. So if an RFC wants to be discussed, they just tag us, the Area Team. And if they don't want to be discussed, they don't. And if someone in the community thinks the Area Team needs to get involved, they tag the Area Team. Done. And then we talk about it.
Are there any categories where we assume tag is present? Because I would say adding dialects is clearly that. Adding, removing dialects, at least.
Yeah. A tag could work, but the
act, I can also just tag myself, but it would be easier if you say, like, okay.
No, you tag, you reply to the RFC and you just tag Area Team.
Yeah, I know. I could do that. I would, like, I don't want just me doing that.
No, it wouldn't be just you, it'd be all of us.
Okay, so let's maybe communicate on that is the preferred way and see if we get not enough or too many of those tags, then we revise.
Yeah.
Because so far, I think I'm the only one who used the tag.
I didn't even know there was a tag until you used it.
Yeah, okay, it's recorded. So there is a tag at MLIR-Area-Team. There's also a tag for the LLVM Project Council. If the Area Team does something wrong, you can ask the Project Council to overturn the decision. Never happened before, so you'll have to come up with a policy if that happens. Okay, one last thing I want to, so we have, historically, we had ODMs and the schedule document owned by somebody at Google, I don't know who owns it anymore, where people would register. Practically how it works is people just write me a message on Discourse. I would want to remove that document entirely and say, well, if you want to organize an ODM, the source of truth is Discourse. It is announced on Discourse, the link is on Discourse, everything else is secondary.
I agree.
Yeah, so I mean, just correction, the document isn't owned by anybody at Google, it never was. But beyond that, I think deprecating it is fine. I think Discourse has been the way we've been organizing these. The only thing that is a little bit missing at the moment is, I think it is, reasonably last minute that we schedule these. There's not a lot of look ahead, so there's no, schedule really, which may affect the amount of folks that can attend, because I think we need to work a little bit on our heads up for topics coming up. But beyond that, I think that's 100% fine to deprecate it.
I got a proposal for that, and is what we're doing on the Tensor compiler side, which is we have a document, doesn't matter, can be Discourse, but we have a document where we list the topics. And if by Tuesday there aren't any topics, we just cancel the Wednesday meeting, right? So here will be a bit more proactive. So if by Monday there are no topics, then we cancel the Thursday meeting or something, right? So I don't know, but the idea is if you have a tag this time, not an tag people, the tag thing that you create saying discuss at ODM or something, then we can add this tag to threads, or the owner, the author can also add this to say, eventually I want to discuss this at the next ODM, and then we can just, in the Monday, Tuesday before the ODM meeting, we look at, it's already there, right? It's a repeat calendar event, but if by Monday we say, there's absolutely nothing, we're going to cancel this one. So I think it's easier to cancel than to book in Wednesday.
I mean, the thing is, we used to operate like that. It was always this time on Thursday. And at some point, we just stopped having any topics to discuss. It was canceled like 2 months in a row. Until it was canceled like half a year in a row. So
right.
I'm trying to reestablish. I think it makes sense. I would say if we, and especially it's summer, if we don't get any more significant discussions, I would say maybe let's schedule it bi-weekly so we don't look like it's always canceled.
Oh, yes. So is it weekly now?
Yeah, it's weekly.
Oh, no, it's too much. It's either bi-weekly or monthly. I don't think.
Well, I mean, not the area team discussion. Area team is supposed to be monthly. It's not really. I mean, the ODM.
Even the ODM, because somebody has to drive it, right? And somebody has to connect and do all the things that you're doing. And you're going to be doing this every week. It's just too much.
And if there is enough interest, I will.
Yeah. I mean, if this was a room and we all worked in the same place and it was a room that you just go to, then it's fine, right? But there is no such tool on the internet that anyone can start a particular meeting. And
I will try to figure out something with discourse based on the tools we have. There's like a wiki post that anybody can edit, I think, or anybody with like some karma. Maybe that could be a good thing. And basically, I'm bringing up things.
But the thing with the tags is you can actually search. So I'm using this on Discourse. You can search things with a particular tag through a particular time window. So I use this to monitor how our team's conversations on Discourse, right? If there's anyone stuck or something. And then I have this series of links by people and date brackets and so on. And I can see how many. And we can do
share
this
some of those with me if you can. And I will try to figure out. So I want to be mindful of time because I promised office hours. We have 7 office minutes. So yeah, it took slightly longer than I expected, but I think it was a good discussion. So if there is somebody on the call who would want to ask a question or discuss, basically at this point, if it's not a short question, I will defer to a further ODM. But if there's somebody, please go ahead or raise your hand or whatever you want. Okay, open mic 1, open mic 2, open mic 3. Okay, no buyers. We can continue chatting between us. So yes, yeah, if there is like, it's one of the things we want to do in the project council is to figure out who has admin privileges on which system we use in LLVM, because it seems to be whoever set it up years ago still does admin. And we think it should be the project council instead, so we can be more dynamic and like, oh, you want a GitHub group or a Discourse tag or something, we can create it without chasing the person who actually has the admin password.
Yeah.
Sorry, which role?
What, sorry?
Which role are you referring to? What?
Any of the tooling, like we have Discourse, we have GitHub, we still have mailing lists, we have build bots. These are run by individuals that like.
So I don't know, build bots, there's an infrastructure group and they're responsible for this, right?
Yeah,
I don't know how well this is being maintained nowadays, but it is their responsibility.
Yeah, but it actually comes from the infrastructure person saying, okay, we have this for the infrastructure, but we do not have it for GitHub. We need to go and chase. I forgot who it was. I think we originally thought it was Nikita, but it wasn't. And maybe Tom. It wasn't either.
Tom. It's usually Tom that does all these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
poor guy.
Yeah, and I'm happy for him to do it, but sometimes people are on vacation or whatnot.
No, Tom never goes into vacation. It's fine.
That was the feedback in the project council when I asked about having multiple lead maintainers on MLIR, and they're like, yeah, why have we not thought about that before? Like this
we did. So I created a round table. I think this was 2010, right? When Galina was the only one maintaining the build bots, and we had a round table. It was like, what happens if a bus hits her, right? And the answer was, we're screwed, because there was nothing we could do, because she had the keys to the kingdom and nobody else did. After that roundtable, nothing changed for at least 5 next years. And luckily, no buses have hit Galina, so we were fine. And I'm saying maybe this would be fine for Tom for the next 5 years. I'm just hoping no bus hits him.
Yeah, you should. The LLVM Foundation should invest into bus protection service.
We've been through that, right? Yes, we've been through that, and they did try.
Okay. I'm done with the agenda we had for today. I will try scheduling another area team meeting in a month-ish. If we suddenly have an enormous amount of RFCs, can be sooner. If it's dry, can be later. Basically, let's be dynamic, but still meet and have people present. If they want to ask questions, people on the call, please don't hesitate. If you do have questions, if you have ideas for things you want to discuss at ODMs, please do let me know. Even before we figure out the technical setup for this, just send me a direct message on Discord. And yeah, ODM does not have to be a seminar where people present things that are done. It was created as an open design meeting, so it's open and has design in it. So it's perfectly fine to come there with a problem and say, oh, I want to model my, I don't know, bus routing system so it doesn't hit LLVM maintainers as a MLIR dialect. Please help me. It's a perfectly valid use of the ODM time. Okay, on that, yes, the chicken dialect. Sure. On the chicken dialect, I will stop the recording. Thanks, everyone.